I'm sure, like many of you, we have all different types of friends, acquaintances, people that just added us on our social media. But our social media pages are covered with tons and tons and tons of people, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or any other type of platform, Twitter, TikTok. If you look through my friends, you'll find tons of different people with different stories about me. Some of them major stories, some of them several stories, and some of them just glimpses into my life. On my Facebook, there's a girl on there who made amazing shrimp Alfredo. You know who you are. That shrimp Alfredo was amazing. There's someone else on my feed that knows of the time that I fell through a beach chair while at a friend's house. It was really embarrassing, and the best part was we covered it up because I didn't want them to know that I broke a beach chair, and I wasn't even that big. I think it was a messed up chair. But I know another person on there that on my Facebook that we went on a mission trip together, and I roomed with them, and they brought an aluminum blanket, those like super solar blankets or whatever, and oh my goodness, all night long this person tossed and turned, and you heard like, and it was crinkly, and it was annoying, and it was missions work. On my feed, there's another person, another old acquaintance of mine, another old friend of mine that has the story or the time. Hopefully all pictures have been destroyed, but where me and him decided we were going to dye our hair as crazy teenagers that we were, and I was going to try for some frosted tips because that was popular back then, and he was going to try to make his hair blonde, and the end result was I had a skunk strip going all the way down the middle of my head, and his hair turned orange. But we have these stories and all these people we share these moments with. But we have these people in these moments, and we see them, and there are some of them that we haven't seen each other in years. We haven't talked in years. Some I'm still close to, and unfortunately some I'm not. Some of them we share this bond with that we've been together as friends for decades, and some of them it was just little glimpses into my life, and that might be the only thing that they remember. Those little tiny details, those little tiny stories, just a glimpse. We have these people that we connect with, that we call our friends. But when you look at it and when you look back on them, sometimes we have these amazing moments. And sometimes when we look back, all we have are those one or two glimpses, those one or two moments, those one or two silly stories we tell, and that's all that we really remember about the person or they remember about us. Today, I want to talk to you guys about one verse. One pretty simple verse. My attention was drawn to this, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And in that verse, it is very small, but we're going to talk about one person that I guarantee you most of you guys have not heard ever mentioned in the Bible. I mean, if I used like Peter, you're like, okay, yeah, I know Peter. Yep. If I use Paul, Paul, Jesus, of course, Abraham, we know all of these names. So the person I want to talk to you about today, you might not have heard a whole lot about their name. 2 Timothy 1:5 says this, I remember your genuine faith, for you share the faith that first filled your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice. And I know that same faith continues strong in you. Today, I want to talk to you guys about your legacy.
From the moment he set foot on an NBA court, Michael Jordan dominated his sport like few athletes ever had.
You've been reading about a man, Greg. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture. And I found it fascinating.
There is an indefinable, mysterious power that pervades everything. I feel it, though I do not see it.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
Now, we have seniors that are graduating. You guys are moving on to college or to the workforce, or you're doing, maybe you're moving into the military. We have a total of 7 students that are actually graduating out of high school this year. And maybe for some of you guys watching this, you are leaving middle school for the first time. You are on top of your class. You're like, yeah, I got this 8th grade. I'm the king. And you're going into high school as a freshman, which kind of means you're nothing. But there are moments in our life like these, or maybe other moments where we look back and we want to talk about what we are leaving behind. I mean, that's what legacy means. Legacy is all about what you leave behind of yourself for other people. Some of us, we want to be seen as cool or the most outgoing. And so all of our school life and all of our friends, we push this whole idea that we are cool, that we are popular, that we are not only accepted, but people want our opinions. And so we push this because we want to be known and seen as this. Some of us, we want to be that student that all the teachers look at and go, oh my goodness. Oh, you're so-and-so's brother. This is going to be a great year. Maybe some of you guys, the legacy you're kind of leaving behind is your teacher's going to look at you and be like, oh, your name is Jason, you're Ryan's brother. This is going to be a fun year. Just kidding. But some of us, we strive for perfection. We strive for the best of grades or those extracurricular activities where we can just add them to our list, or people can see all that we're doing so we can be like, look at me, look at what I'm doing. I am making an impact. So we choose the right words. We take the right classes. We choose the right outfits. But that's not the legacy I want to talk to you guys about today. Because when we talk about legacy, that is where our mind first goes. What are people going to remember me as in high school? What are people going to remember me as in middle school? When I leave, what will they say about me? Can I be honest? Those stories of what people say about your attitude in high school or the classes that you took or the grades you had. Listen, I'm not saying your grades don't matter and stuff, but those stories in the end, they don't matter towards your legacy. In the end, those stories, all of those friends that I mentioned on Facebook, all of those little glimpses, they're great, they're awesome to laugh at and look at, but the truth is, as far as a legacy, if someone just remembers me as the kid that fell through a chair, if someone just remembers you as that person that had the aluminum foil blanket, and that is all they remember you, then something has been missed. Then in the end, those things don't really matter. I mean, being honest, some of these friends that I have still on Facebook, some of these friends that I occasionally talk with, I am completely different than they would remember me as. For some of them, they are completely different and have changed entirely from what I would remember them as. For some of them, growing up, we weren't really the best of friends. We were more just acquaintances. We kind of hung out in the same group. And what's crazy is looking at some of them now, I'm like, we would have been the best of friends if we both had the same attitude and the same outlook and the same activities and all that kind of stuff that we're doing now. If we did it all the way back then, we would have been the best of friends. See, sometimes we focus on all of the wrong things to try to make an impact or to try to leave a legacy because we want people to think these things about us. But in the end, some of those things, they just don't matter. Today, I want to challenge you with what you will really leave behind. What you will really leave behind when you leave high school. When you're done with middle school. When you've moved on from Epic. When you leave California. When you get married and have kids. I want to challenge you with what you will really leave behind that'll make a difference. Something that'll really matter. So in that verse I read earlier, Paul is writing to Timothy, and he's talking about Timothy's faith. And we know about Timothy, if you've read through anything, you know that Timothy was this amazing young man of God that made a huge difference in the church at the time. I mean, and he was young, and that's what made it so amazing, was the fact that Paul talked to him at certain points about, like, don't let people look down on you because of your age and everything like that. He was young and on fire for God and making a difference. But in this verse, Paul attributes all of that to the faith his grandmother had. In essence, kind of saying the man you are today is because of what your grandmother poured into your mother and what your mother poured into you. All of what he did for the church and for Christianity was a reflection of what started with his grandmother. See, we don't hear their names as much. We know the name Timothy. We know the name Barnabas sometimes. But when you hear those names, Eunice, I mean, those names don't jump out at us because we don't hear tons of stories being preached about them because they're only in a couple of verses being mentioned in the Bible. And yet, everything of one of the major characters of the Bible, Timothy, everything that he is because of the legacy his grandmother left for him. Without realizing it, she made a difference in the gospel because she left a legacy for her grandson. I want you to think right now. How will people remember you? Will they remember you as the kid that passed all of those classes? Maybe you scored the touchdown when they needed it the most and you were the farthest behind. Maybe you were the one that led your study group and everyone got an A on that test. I mean, those are all great, and I'm not washing those away and saying, hey, you didn't do anything because you had those things. Those are great. But I want to challenge you guys today to look past some of those physical things. And I want to challenge you to make an eternal difference and to leave an eternal legacy that'll matter not just here on earth, but in eternity. There are 3 quick things I want to talk about today that have everything to do with how we leave that eternal impact, how you leave that lasting legacy. And the first one is this: live for God. Yes, I know it's a church group, it's youth ministry, so you figured something like that was going to come in. But Paul states that it is their faith that made a difference in Timothy's life. Too many people make decisions to follow God and his direction later on in life, and there's nothing bad with that, but sometimes we have this mindset that, well, I want to live life, I want to experience everything, and then I'll do the whole living for God later on. And what's crazy is that we end up looking back all of those years later and just seeing maybe issues we ran into, troubles we went through, mistakes we made, when the whole time we could have been living for God and still experiencing life. I mean, I have experienced so much in life being a Christian. There are things that I've done that never in my wildest dreams would I ever imagine myself doing, and yet I did it following God as a Christian. So don't believe this whole Christians are boring lie. But when we are paying attention to God, when we are talking to him, as in prayer, spending time with him, drawing close to him, when we are reading with him and the story that he left behind for us in the Bible, he will speak to us in different ways. Now, I know some of you guys are like, well, I've never heard God's audible voice. I think there's only been 1 or 2 times that I actually heard a voice. Most of the time it is that feeling inside or that person that comes across your path and you're like, oh my goodness, this was a God moment. There are different ways that God speaks to us, but the closer we are with him, the more in tune with what he wants us to do. And the more that we start realizing that those people that we are surrounded with, we're not surrounded with them or around them by mistake. He has put them into our life. The job you're at, the school you're at, the family you're with, that's not a mistake, but it is ordained by him. It is set up by him so that you can start making a difference, but that only really comes into play when we are drawing close to God, when we're in close proximity to him. Oftentimes, when we are doing the best that we can to live for him, I'm not saying living a perfect life, but when you are really trying your best to live for him, that's when you hear later about these times that you were coming across people and you talked to people, or you prayed for someone, or you had these encouraging words. And to you, it was just something you said or something you did, but it made an impact in their life. I'm convinced that some of the people that you will make the biggest impact in their life, it won't be those moments that you're like, this is it. This is where I impart everything on this person. It'll be those moments where someone says something and they're like, 10 years ago, you said this to me and it made a difference. And you were like, I don't even remember that. Because God guides us and leads us. And when we are drawing close to him and spending time with him, he guides us to say the right things and do the right things, even if we're not realizing in that moment that this is making a difference, or this will have an eternal impact. So the first thing, spend time with God. The second thing, mentor someone. I don't care about your age. If you're watching this and you're like, I am like 12 years old, how am I going to mentor someone? Hey, Paul mentored Timothy. He took him under his wings. There will always be someone younger than you that you can pour into, that you can help guide and teach. When we were meeting in person, we had one of our seniors helping lead the girls' small group. Melissa had a bunch of people, and this senior had a bunch of people. Now, there was only a couple of years separated between her and some of these other girls, and yet she is helping guide, mentor, and shape these young women. No matter what your age, there are always people under you, grade-wise, year-wise, that are hungry and desperate for someone to pour into them. Someone that you can teach, and more importantly, that you can be there for. When you have someone guiding you in this way, when you have someone that has your back in this way, that'll help teach you, that'll help lead you, when you have someone that you're pouring into, I've sometimes found the best growth that I have in my walk with God, or just personally, the best growth comes from when I'm mentoring someone else. Because I'm not just teaching them, I am learning in the process. Who are you guiding? Because there are always people around that are hungry and desperate for it. But sometimes we need to get our focus off of ourselves and start saying, okay, God, who is around me that I can start pouring into? Who is around me that I can stick up for? Who's around me that I can help out with? So mentor someone. And the last thing is focus on what matters. I mean, it can be so easy to get distressed, squirrel, to get distracted. We do it daily. I mean, I've talked about before, like those times where we sit down with the Bible and I'm like, okay, God, I'm going to spend the next half hour in your word. And that's when I realized that there's a piece of lint on the ground, and that's just a really weird piece of lint. Oh my goodness. How have I never noticed that before? Oh my, wow. That is so in the shape and oh wow, underneath my bed. I didn't realize, wow, that's a lot of dust building. Oh my goodness. I remember that box. And do you ever find that like when you really want to focus on something is when you get the most distracted? It is so easy to get distracted, and in life, it happens all the time. And what happens is we cave into the pressure of the now. What is happening now? We cave into the pressure of popularity and the distraction of popularity, of success, of fear, of guys, of girls. We cave under these distractions. And so we set out to do something. We set out to focus on maybe our grades, or maybe our friends, or maybe God. And we get distracted by all of these things, and we end up falling off to go over to these things, to go after the popularity, to go after that guy or girl, to go after success. Or maybe living in fear, and so because of that, we go off and just kind of hide because we're terrified. But when you focus on what matters, others see it. It is that quality sometimes where you're like, I can't describe it, but I just know that person has set what they are doing in their life, I want to be a part of, because they are not being distracted. They're not being pulled to the side. They have set their eyes on something, and they are living it and following it through. And the truth is, when you live like that, others are drawn to it. And in the end, I have found that all of those times that I chased down girls, all those times that I chased down popularity, all those times that I tried to chase down success, or I was overwhelmed by fear, with a lot of those good things, God wanted to give me those things. But when I chose to chase them down, I missed opportunities. I got distracted. I lost focusness. But when my eyes were set on him and I was doing my best to follow after him, all of those things came into my path at the right time. If God wants you to have those things, he will provide them. And the longer you walk with him, the more those provisions will come in of those things. But it's up to us to not be distracted by the things that are around us and keep our eyes focused on him and what matters. I mean, think of the example that'll set. If you are a Christian that will not be persuaded by the rest of the world, that will not be pulled off to the left or to the right from your walk, but you have your eyes set on God, you are mentoring others, you are drawing close to him, what difference will that make in people's lives? Not to have that leader that falters and falls down and you're like, are they going to be in a good mood? I'm walking around like in eggshells around them. I don't know how they're going to be today. But if you were so set and so focused, what example does that set to those that are looking to you? See, I've mentioned him before, but my youth pastor is one of those people that he poured into me and so many others. And looking just overhead at his life, he spent time with God. I mean, I remember those moments when we were doing, youth worship, and we didn't have a band at the time, but there were like 60 kids in a dark room watching a YouTube video with lyrics, and we were just praising and worshiping God, and he would be off in the corner by himself, just crying out to God and worshiping him. I saw that. He wasn't doing it for attention, but I saw that, and it made me want that relationship that he had with God. He took me under his wing when I was the socially awkward kid. At points, he gave me a video camera and he said, hey, just record stuff, when he knew that I just felt socially awkward. Later on, when I started going to school to be a youth pastor, he gave me opportunities. He would test me. He would quiz me. He would be like, what would you do in this set of circumstances? When this happens, what would you do? Okay, here, I'm going to hand this project over to you and I want you to do it. He would give me opportunity after opportunity. He would challenge me because he was mentoring me to be the man who I am today. And the biggest thing, he didn't care what others thought about him. He was set to be the best man of God that he could to his family. He was set to be the best pastor that he could, and his focus was on God. If you talk to him about what other youth ministries were doing, he could care less because he knew that he was set here to do God's work. He didn't care, and he wasn't distracted on others' approval, on others' thoughts. He was focused on what God had called him to do and doing everything to the fullest that God was raising up within him. He focused on what mattered and didn't get distracted. And the truth is that there are many that followed him. Not because he said, follow me, and not because he drew this whole attention to himself, and not because he did it just to get tons of followers and to be popular and everything like that. He did it because he spent time with God. He did it because he mentored people, and he did it because he was focused on what mattered. And even looking back, there are times that he will be like, no, I didn't do much, because he wasn't doing it for earthly praise. He was doing what God called him to do. But the difference he made in people's lives is lasting. See, he left a legacy without trying to be the most popular, without trying to be the most cutting edge, without trying to have everything under the sun, and without trying to be this all-in-all person that everyone knows and everyone talks about and everyone sees and everyone worships. He did all of that, and he left a legacy because he followed what God had set before him and the path God set before him. My challenge to you guys is, what are you leaving behind? What is the legacy you're leaving behind? Because the truth is, all of that other stuff is great, but it doesn't make a difference eternally. Are you spending time, really trying to spend time with God? Who do you have that you could mentor in your life? That you could take this person under your wing? Are you distracted by everything so easily? Or are you focused on what matters? Because the truth is, when I am gone, I don't want the legacy to be, well, he was a fun guy, or he was goofy, or he was weird. I want my legacy to be that God made such an impact in your life, that you are living out your walk for God, that you are still young and strong Christian men and women who are passionate for God. That's the legacy that I want to leave behind. What is the legacy that you are leaving behind now? And what is the legacy you want to leave behind? Father, I pray that you would help us. And it is so easy, especially when it comes to this time of year where people are graduating and moving and all that kind of stuff. It is so easy for us to be distracted by everything else. But I pray that you would help us to take this to heart. What legacy are we leaving behind? This woman was mentioned very briefly in the Bible. And yet everything that Timothy was because of her and the faith she lived out. And so I pray that you would help us not to care about whether our name is mentioned in the books, whether our name is in the spotlights or anything, but that we would live a life that leaves a legacy behind so that we could make a difference in people's lives. Not for attention, not for focus on ourselves, but that we would live a life that matters and changes other people's lives. We thank you and praise you in your name. Amen. All right, guys. It's kind of getting near the end. Hopefully Epic will be starting up in a week or so. But for all of you guys that are graduating, again, we are so proud of you guys, what you have done and what you've gone through, especially in this year of 2020. But we are so proud of everything that you guys have done. We can't wait to see everyone again. I can't wait for you guys to meet Ava. Me, Melissa, Aria, Ava, we love you guys. We miss you, and we can't wait to see you soon. All right, guys. See you later. Bye.